afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Lori Young, and I'm with Iowa CCI Action Fund. Let me welcome you again to my hometown and the capital city, Des Moines, Iowa. It's very good to have you here. Look around this space. Look at all the wonderful diversity in the room. We truly are a tapestry of America. As you can see, I am Black and I am female. And in America, those two factors alone have influenced my socioeconomic status and my human experience, sometimes negatively, oftentimes beyond my control. Black Lives Matter. I'm also a single mother who raised two young Black men who today have beaten the odds because, one, they are still alive at age 30 and 24. Thank God. They are fully employed and they have never been incarcerated. But let's face it, that's a little bit of my story, but we all have a story. We're here today because we know that our issues are interconnected. And these are the real issues that impact our daily lives in our communities. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be all that I ought to be until you are all that you ought to be." We need a government that puts the people and the planet first. Not a government that destroys our democracy with backroom deals. So what must we do? We must work to dismantle the private prison industry, which profits billions off the backs of millions of Black and brown bodies. We must shut down those greedy businesses who make billions in profits but refuse to pay their employees a living wage. We must divest fossil fuel and large corporate agricultural industries who exploit and pollute our land and water for profit. Our families can't survive on a dead planet. So that's the fight that we're in, and together we can do this. And I need you, and you need me. Today we are glad to have with us Governor Martin OMalley, who is seeking the Democratic nomination for President of these United States. Governor, today you will hear our issues. Governor, today you will learn and appreciate our stories. And most importantly, you'll respond to our questions. And you have about 1 hour to do so. So without further delay, help me welcome to the podium Governor Martin OMalley.
Well, thank you. Thanks very, very much. Hey, thank you. Wow. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Back at you. Oh, I want to thank CCI Action and all of you for coming out here today. It sounds like there's a lot of energy in this room, yes? Well, good. It's my great honor to be here with all of you and to talk about the story that we share together, the story of us.
I'm a resident of Baltimore City, and I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, in a place called Cochran Gardens, which was comprised of 5 buildings, 25 stories high. And the elevator in my building never worked. It was so scary going through those stairwells, trying to get to the 20th floor. I saw so many things in those stairwells. I saw people rolling dice. I saw fights. I saw bullying. I even saw women getting raped. A 6-year-old should not have to see that. Sometimes I would run 3 blocks down, and there was this beautiful 4-story building. Beautiful flowers, nice shiny windows, and an elevator that worked. I'd stand out there and just watch people go in and come out. None of them looked like me. The school I attended looked much like the building that I lived in. It looked like a prison. It had windows we could not see in or out of. The books were old. There was no lined paper. And from pre-K through high school, I did not experience one science lab. I said to myself, when I have kids, they will not be raised in a place where I was raised. They deserve more. So I worked hard, and I got what I think is a beautiful education. And I said, through those trials, I will dedicate my life to creating healthy communities for healthy families, and we're doing just that in Baltimore City. We are working with community leaders, with churches, and with private investors, bringing them together to leverage local, state, and federal funds to transform these distressed communities. We're also talking to CEOs of the top companies and saying to them, you must pay a living wage.
I'm from Minneapolis. And for the past 6 to 7 years, I've struggled with long bouts of unemployment, and I've worked a variety of minimum wage jobs, doing all this to take care of me and my daughter. But through it all, I had hope. I had hope because I was a college student who was really close to graduating, knowing that once I graduated, I would be so much closer to achieving the elusive American dream. But once I graduated, I figured out that that American dream was just that, a dream. Sometimes I had to choose between eating food or paying my rent. In the wealthiest nation in the world, that ain't right. Okay, now the Federal Reserve has a mandate for full employment, but black communities, specifically in the Midwest, are struggling to find employment, and they haven't felt the effects of this mandate. In Minnesota, black Minnesotans, the rate of unemployment for black Minnesotans is almost 4 times as high as it is for white Minnesotans. The median income gap is $33,000. Okay, these disparities create an atmosphere of desperation. And once you combine this atmosphere of hopelessness and desperation with the archaic system of policing, what you've created is a ticking time bomb. These bombs have exploded in the form of uprisings in Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, and most recently back home in Minneapolis. All over, people of color have taken to the streets to say one thing, that our lives matter. Now, Governor, the Fed has played a direct role in the pain and suffering of these communities. By not fulfilling the mandate for full employment and not reinvesting resources into these communities, they have left people scrambling for hope.
I'm going to shift gears for a minute and talk about foreign policy and ask you about a foreign policy issue. And this one is on a topic, a human rights situation that all too often goes ignored in our priorities, especially when we talk about the Middle East. And that is the fate of Palestinians who are living under Israeli occupation. It is clear that both Palestinians and Israelis have suffered from their fair share of violence. Yet with the Gaza blockade and military checkpoints and the destruction of farming and livelihoods and bombing campaigns, Palestinians are being forced to live as second-class citizens in their own land. Now, Presidential candidates always pay tribute to our special relationship with Israel, which, as you know, comes with $3 billion in military aid every year, without mentioning the plight of Palestinians. My question is, under an OMalley administration, would that aid and friendship be unconditional? And if not, what steps would Israel be required to take toward honoring calls for a Palestinian homeland?
What I would say is this, is that the conditions or conditions for American aid should always be a commitment to universal values of freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom from oppression, the dignity of every person. We have made some pretty grave mistakes ourselves in the Middle East.
So, Governor, I want to pick up on the previous question and go back to the first question, because you saw the resonance in the audience for those of us concerned about the plight of Palestinians. I think many of us would see what's happening in the Middle East as apartheid. I think many of us would still see what's happening in South Africa as apartheid. And some of us would also see what's happening in American cities as racial apartheid. And so I want to go back to your first question. It's sort of linked to the aid question and ask you, how much domestic aid would you provide to deal with racial apartheid in American cities, and would you target it to the places most in distress?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's why I've come out with an agenda for a new agenda for American cities. I mean, my passion is America's cities. Some people look at America's cities and they see only the despair, the dichotomy, the great gulf between our promise as a nation and how short we come up on that. I see cities as places of tremendous opportunity to save lives, to redeem lives, to make lives better. And that's what I've dedicated my life to. I mean, so yes, the targeting of those transportation dollars, CDBG, all of that would be about addressing, look, growing injustices, structural unemployment, and in many cities, police brutality. None of these things go away by themselves. They require us to take these actions.
Well, I'm a single parent of 4, and particularly a sole caregiver and provider for a special needs joy named Deshawn. Since arriving in Des Moines some 6 years ago, I've been in constant pursuit of my education. I'm standing here today with concerns with equal pay and affordable child care. I worked for an insurance company here in Des Moines for about 5 years, and while working there, I received less an hour than my white male and white female coworkers. After working at that company for 2 years, I received my first raise. It was 10 cents. I went from $14 an hour to $14.10 an hour. While I was working at the company, I was also receiving a subsidy for child care assistance while I was working towards my bachelor's degree. Well, that subsidy was reduced and ultimately discontinued because that 10 cents disqualified me and made me ineligible for child care assistance based off of child care guidelines. Lovingly, I meet the challenges of the emotional challenges of raising a child as special as Deshawn. With courage, I meet the academic challenges of being an adult learner frustratingly. I faced the challenges of having to pay $185 a week for childcare for a child, as well as meeting the basic needs for providing for my family. Governor, they tell me that if I get an education, I am guaranteed a good salary, a livable salary. My question to you today is, what are you going to do, and how are you going to make childcare work for a person like me who desires only to make a better life for herself and her family?
Thank you.
Often we hear from Washington that free trade must be a priority between the U.S. and her trading partners. It was free trade that brought us NAFTA in the 1990s, followed by CAFTA, and that's when my community began to change. My family and family farmers in our communities had, in the past, diversified operations, raising a variety of livestock and row crops, and we had bustling rural communities. With NAFTA and CAFTA, we began to see the consolidation of the farming industry. Corporate concentration continues to increase today. Diversified family farms face a monoculture, a system of monoculture as we watch the monopolizing of our seed, fertilizer, and herbicides, and even farmer-owned cooperatives. Livestock is largely raised in factory farms. We have over 9,000 of those in the state of Iowa today, and new ones built consistently. We are watching the slow death of our small towns. In spite of the drumbeat of free trade that we hear with the TPP, it will just bring more of the same. It will be NAFTA on steroids. How will your trade policies reverse the devastation brought to us by NAFTA and CAFTA? And what kind of trade policy will you champion that puts everyday people before corporate profits?
I believe that good trade deals for the United States of America are trade deals that actually raise standards for workers and raise standards for the environment. And trade deals that lower standards for workers and lower standards for the environment anywhere in the world are bad for the United States of America and the small towns of Iowa. So I am opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And as an American, I think we should all be opposed to secret trade deals that our Congress has to vote on before we're even allowed to read them.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria, and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am a mother, grandmother, educator, organizer, and a family caregiver. I cared for my mother for over 7 years before she passed away. Sometimes I neglected my own needs to focus on hers. During this time, I left my job to take care of her. And as a result, I lost my home to foreclosure. But if I had to do it again, I would. Many women like me, we step out of the traditional workforce to take care of our children and our family members. And because of this, we are punished. Sometimes because we are not earning wages, we are also not earning Social Security credits. Okay. Governor O'Malley. Governor, okay? Governor O'Malley. My question to you is this. Family caregivers such as myself, what solutions do you think will help us as we retire and we age?
All right.
I believe that we need to expand Social Security and give proper credit to family caregiving.
When I was a senior in college, I suddenly lost pretty much all my eyesight due to a rare genetic condition. At that time, I was unable to continue with school or work, and so I went on a number of government programs, including Medicaid and Medicare. Those programs allowed me to continue to get medication I needed and to see doctors while I learned to deal with my blindness. Since then, as an advocate and an organizer, I have met countless individuals in my state who don't have the health care they need, who can't afford, don't make enough to get health care through the Affordable Care Act, and who can't even get Medicaid because my state hasn't expanded it yet. Many of these people are suffering dearly, and 700 of them die every year. In states that have expanded Medicaid, like Iowa, they're planning to privatize it. And we know that's not what the people need. Healthcare is a human right. And shouldn't be treated as a privilege allotted to the lucky. Governor OMalley, while healthcare is something that is needed for almost all aspects of life, from working at a job to caring for one's family, far too few people in our country have access to it. What are you going to do to fix this?
To cover more of our people. There are a lot of people that are left out under the Affordable Care Act, and there's a lot of governors that are leaving their people out by clinging to ideology and refusing the Medicaid dollars. So we need to persuade them at the ballot box, and also by lifting up those examples of states that are actually making this work.